In the heart of a dense, eerie forest, a lone camper arrived as nightfall approached. This is not your typical forest, but one that is cloaked in a blanket of unsettling mystery. The thick foliage whispers tales of the unknown, and the tall trees stand as silent witnesses to the secrets the forest keeps. Our protagonist of the tale, a solitary camper, steps into this world where the ordinary meets the extraordinary. He navigates through the forest, the rustling leaves underfoot the only disruption in the profound silence. Finally, he finds a clearing, a small patch of land where the moonlight filters through the dense canopy, casting an ethereal glow. This is where he decides to set up camp, a tiny island of familiarity in the ocean of the unknown. As the twilight deepens, the forest comes alive, not with the comforting sounds of nature, but with an orchestra of unsettling whispers. The wind howls through the trees, the nocturnal creatures stir, their eyes glowing in the dark, and the forest seems to breathe, each exhale a chilling reminder of the camper's isolation. Our camper, although a stranger to this terrain, dismisses the strange noises as mere forest sounds. The hoot of an owl, the rustling of leaves, the distant echo of a creature unknown. He convinces himself it's all part of the wilderness experience. But beneath his feigned bravado, a seed of unease begins to sprout. He tries to shake off the feeling, attributing it to the isolation and the darkness. But the forest, with its symphony of strange sounds, refuses to let him ignore the burgeoning dread. Each rustle seems to grow louder, each howl more haunting, and the darkness around him feels almost alive. Despite the growing discomfort, he settles into his tent, the thin fabric his only shield against the uncanny wilderness. He clings to the dwindling remnants of logic, hoping that the morning light will dispel the night's eerie illusions. But the forest has its own rhythm, its own rules, and as a guest he's yet to learn them. As the night grew darker, so did the feeling of unease. In the depth of the night, something stirred in the shadows, unseen but not unfelt. The camper, enveloped by the inky blackness of the wilderness, lay restless in his tent. The usual nocturnal symphony of crickets and owls was punctuated by eerie, discordant notes. Strange rustlings and unplaceable sounds echoed in the stillness, each one a jarring reminder of his solitude. A chill ran down the camper's spine as he felt the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes upon him, as if the darkness itself was watching, waiting. He couldn't shake off the unsettling sensation, the feeling of being observed by something lurking just beyond the veil of the night. With a sigh, he unzipped his tent, the sound gratingly loud in the otherwise silent night. The flashlight's beam cut through the darkness, casting long and twisted shadows that seemed to dance and flit around him, as if they had a life of their own. He scanned the surroundings, the small circle of light from his flashlight appearing pitifully inadequate against the vast expanse of the night. But there was nothing out of the ordinary, only the usual symphony of the wilderness, now silent, as if holding its breath. Then came the whispers. Soft, barely audible, like a breeze rustling through the leaves. He strained his ears, but there was no discernible source. Just the whispers, carried on the wind, chilling his very soul. He shook his head, dismissing the eerie happenings as figments of his overactive imagination. He was alone, miles away from civilization. His mind was playing tricks on him, he assured himself. With a final sweep of the flashlight, he retreated back into his tent, the whispers fading into the background. He lay down, closing his eyes, attempting to shut out the disturbing noises. He tried to focus on the rhythm of his own breathing, the steady rise and fall of his chest. He willed himself to sleep, to escape from the night's eerie embrace. But sleep, that night, was a distant dream. As dawn broke, the camper woke up to an alarming sight. The tranquility of the morning was shattered by the chaos that had unfolded at his campsite overnight. His once organized campsite was now a shambles, his belongings strewn about with reckless abandon. The morning breeze whispered tales of an unknown intruder, carrying with it an eerie chill. A sense of dread washed over him as he took in the sight of his ravaged sanctuary. His tent, once a symbol of comfort and safety, was now a shredded mess. His cooking utensils, his backpack, his survival gear, all scattered like leaves in the autumn wind. But what truly sent a shiver down his spine were the strange symbols etched into the ground. They were symbols he'd never seen before, unfamiliar and unsettling. They were carved with an unnerving precision, their purpose unknown yet sinister. The symbols seemed to dance in the early morning light, their shadows casting grotesque shapes onto the forest floor. The camper felt an icy grip of fear clutching his heart. He was perplexed, terrified even. The once serene forest now felt like a monstrous labyrinth, its trees whispering secrets he couldn't comprehend. His sanctuary had turned into a nightmare, and the only thought that echoed in his mind was to leave. But as he packed his scattered belongings and prepared to leave, he noticed his path blocked by fallen trees. They lay like giant slumbering beasts, their gnarled branches intertwining to form an impenetrable barrier. The forest, it seemed, had conspired against him. The camper was trapped, his escape thwarted by the very nature he had sought solace in. The morning sun filtered through the canopy, casting long, ominous shadows. The chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, the whispering wind, they all seemed to be part of a haunting symphony, an ominous prelude to the horror to come. It was clear, he was not alone in this forest. The forest held a secret, a hidden presence that had revealed itself in the most terrifying way. What lay ahead was unknown, but one thing was certain. The camper was not alone, and the forest was watching. As the day wore on, the camper came face to face with his worst nightmare. His heart pounded in his chest like a frantic drumbeat echoing through the still forest. He stood frozen, his gaze locked on a ghostly apparition that materialized before him. This was no ordinary figure, it was a silhouette shrouded in an ethereal darkness that seemed to consume the very light around it. It was an image from the deepest recesses of fear, a chilling embodiment of the unknown. The figure didn't utter a word, yet its silence was deafening, filling the air with a palpable dread. Its form, though vague and indistinct, seemed to ripple with an otherworldly energy. With a slow, deliberate motion, it extended an arm, its shadowy finger pointing ominously towards a path leading deeper into the forest. The camper felt a chill run down his spine. His mind screamed at him to run, to escape, but something held him in place. It was as if an invisible force had gripped him, pulling him towards the path. Fear, that primal instinct that warns of danger, was now driving him towards it. His body moved almost of its own accord, his feet stepping onto the path that the spectral figure had indicated. As he ventured deeper into the forest, the world around him seemed to change. The trees loomed larger, their shadows darker, and the silence was punctuated by the distant hoot of an owl. The path twisted and turned, leading him further and further from the safety of his camp. His heart pounded louder, his breath came in ragged gasps, but he pushed on, driven by a desperate need to escape, to survive. He didn't know what awaited him in the heart of the forest, but he knew he had no other choice. Fear had led him here, and now it was his only guide. Into the heart of darkness, he ventured. His journey, marked by terror and uncertainty, was far from over, but there was a strange sense of resolution in his steps, a determination born of desperation. He was no longer just a camper. He was a survivor, braving the unknown. Deep within the forest, the camper stumbled upon a chilling truth. A deserted campsite, swallowed up by nature's unforgiving growth, lay before him. Its eerie silence whispered tales of a time long past, of laughter and camaraderie that once filled the air, now replaced by an unsettling stillness. Among the remnants of forgotten memories, he found something. An old, weather-worn journal, its pages yellowed by time and the elements. It belonged to a previous camper, someone who had tasted the same terror that now hung heavy in the air. The entries within were a testament to a similar encounter, one with the spectral figure that had been haunting his own journey. As he delved deeper into the handwritten pages, a story began to unfold. It was one of a spirit, forever trapped within the confines of the forest. A spirit that was not a harbinger of doom, as he'd initially feared, but a lost soul seeking salvation. The ghostly figure, it seemed, was a hapless victim of circumstance, forever bound to the forest, its ethereal form a mere echo of its former life. It was not malicious, it was desperate. Desperate for freedom, for peace, for an end to its endless, tormented existence. It was a prisoner of its own fate, its spectral form a constant reminder of its unfinished business on this earthly plane. The journal revealed that the spirit needed help to be free, to find peace. It was trapped, tethered to the world of the living by unseen chains, and it was crying out for release. It was not a predator stalking its prey, but a plea for assistance, a cry for help that echoed through the trees and chilled the marrow in his bones. And with that revelation, he understood. He was not the prey, but the savior. He was not a mere camper, lost in a haunted forest. He was the beacon of hope for a lost soul, the key to its freedom, the one who could finally grant it the peace it so desperately sought.